Mm. Continue.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Myers, and I'm a programmer with SF DocFest. And I'm really excited to be moderating this conversation about the house we lived in. And before we even go further into the conversation, I'd love to have you all just introduce yourselves and say hello.
Hi, my name's Tim O'Donnell, and I'm lucky to be the director of the house we lived in.
And I am the victim. My name is Todd O'Donnell, and I am Timmy's father.
Well, thank you
Or
both.
you could say subject instead of victim, but
Yeah,
that,
but it's okay. Whatever. I'm glad to be able to give something back to this world based on what happened to me. And the best way to do it is through this film and people understanding that brain injury is sometimes more devastating than physical injury.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because to kind of start the conversation off, earlier on in the film, Tim, you say like you needed to document this experience, this sadness. And I'm really curious to hear from both of you about, the decision to film and to continue filming throughout the process, because it is such a personal experience. And I believe this is your first feature. And so for this to be kind of sort of like thinking about opening up so much of your life to being viewed potentially by multiple people, I'm just curious about how you decided that like you wanted to pick the camera up and to continue picking the camera up throughout the process. And then Todd, if you want to talk at all about like for you being documented throughout the process as you were recovering and sort of coming to, before we started, you talked about this being sort of a rebirth. So I'd love to sort of hear how you all feel about that, about the decision to even make a film.
Yeah, great question. I think, there's two critical moments within the film in terms of ethics, and it's an ongoing evolution with documentary ethics, because there's lots of situations where even a subject says yes, and maybe it's not appropriate. There's the voyeur, there's the outsider coming in without the compassion needed. So there's lots of things. And I think the first thing is my dad was unconscious. He was in a coma for 8 days, and I started to film. They didn't allow cameras in the ICU. It was more of a therapeutic means for me. My dad taught me how to use a camera early on in life. And just so happened I'd left, I was a high school teacher and a wrestling coach, and I left my profession, which I'd done for 6 years, went to school for, to be a filmmaker. So I had that moment in life 2 months before my dad fell. And I did not intend to make a 10.5 year long film about my dad. But, at the onset, it was more of me just getting through the moment. My dad, potentially dying, was just one last kind of image. As he started to wake up, and you'll see in the film his progression, he was very aware that I was there with the camera. And early on, it wasn't even about a film. It was more about, when you have a brain injury, memory is a big thing that's affected. So immediately he would wake up, and it was like Groundhog Day, and would have to explain everything of what happened. The camera became a tool because we had the laptop right there, so I could show him footage from the previous week. So, you don't see that in the film, but it was also kind of a tool to motivate him, because it's pretty challenging to wake up, not have your memory there, and be, somewhat frozen. He wasn't able to move his body a lot of days early on, wasn't able to walk. There's lots of things that he had to do. So that just became one piece. Fast forward a bunch of years down the line, the film gets into my father's gambling addiction and other addictions. And there were things where me and the entire family and Todd had to talk about what we wanted to show and what we didn't want to show. So, we did have things that we recorded that we did not include in the film because of those reasons. So, ethically, there's lots of different things that we really had to wrestle with and navigate and make sure everyone felt really comfortable because of the nature of this type of film. But yeah, what was your experience like being filmed at?
Well, I really didn't understand it at first for a while because he was documenting how I came back, and I just thought it was kind of like a film for the family to watch, like they used to in the old days. And but then it started to progress, and I thought about, what good it would do not only for me but for the family. I didn't think about other brain injured people at the time because my mind didn't go there. And I said, if I can remember my kids and my wife, Gail, and my grandkids, then I must be getting better. So it was a maturing process that was documented by Tim. Now, how many people seeing their dad like that says we might as well capture the last days of dad's life? I mean, that took a lot, but I was glad for him. He's always been a strong man. He's very sensitive to people's needs. If you watch any more of his movies, you'll see there are quite a few stories about people that have things happen to them, and they try to do the best they can. And that's all we want to do in life, no matter where you come from. And so the experience to me on seeing everything after it was done was that it was amazing. I mean, at first I looked and I said, that's just some guy they're filming, and that's good. And then when my mind became a little bit more in tune, I said, that's me and that's the family. And that's what life's all about, is you and the family. Everything else that happens around you, yeah, you're concerned with, but we go through life and we remember the family, and that's basically what I remember.
And one thing that happened too that was really nice for my dad is immediately we created a short film, a few months after he got out of the hospital, and put that out, and then ESPN ended up adapting that short with us, and that got a lot of attention. And that short film became a tool for my dad to become an advocate within the brain injured community.
Yeah.
And eventually, he started going to different support groups, and it is quite a advocate in that space, as well as motivational and that sort of thing. So which was important when something like this happens and your life completely changes. For him to have that connection to the community, I think was also a nice positive early on.
Yeah, it was very good because I spent so much time with my two boys, my oldest boy TJ and Timmy, with wrestling. That's where he learned to use the camera. We went around the country filming him and filming my oldest son. And so by having a connection, not only myself trying to get back to the middle of the mat, but understanding that that's where I spent a lot of time with my boys, that I understood it was something that connected. And a lot of things in brain injury take a while to connect. I'm at a point now, almost 11 years out, that I've probably plateaued. And I sit down and I think about everything, and I say, if this is the way it's going to be, I'm okay with it. I mean, I've got a lot of, I had cancer and I had a colorectal and I have a colostomy bag and stuff, but it doesn't really matter to me. See, everything is fine. I've never had a bad second since this happened.
Wow, yeah, it's really interesting hearing, or really beautiful hearing about the sort of community that you were able to really form after it, because I'm sure that it can feel very, very lonely. And it's something that actually, there's another film in the festival that also is about the filmmaker themselves had a traumatic brain injury in the film, and he made a film about sort of that experience as well. And he said a similar thing in terms of just being able to have some sense of community about this experience that not everyone can quite fully understand. And I think hearing you all talk about like the experience of filming growing up actually connects really well to the next question I wanted to ask you all, sort of about the projection mapping and the experience of using that as a way for us to like see more of these filmed memories from you growing up, but also sort of reaffirming how you're kind of trying to use the film as another way of helping your dad kind of regain some of his memories. And so I'm just curious about the experience of figuring out how you wanted to map those projections in particular, and how you decided that this was one form of presenting sort of trying to find your dad and trying to find things through images that had already been filmed. And then Todd, I'm also curious for you about the moments when Tim is like really close and on your face and kind of moving around you with the camera, if you want to speak to that at all, or just the experience of having that much sort of like light and image on your actual physical body. So yeah, curious to hear you all talk about that.
Yeah, I know it was, you know, the nature of my family's relationship is very close and, you know, very raw and real. And we do not like sort of wait to talk about issues. And so I knew my dad would be up for it, but I still wanted to explain what we were going to do because it's very foreign. You know, if you could imagine the subject of a film, you know, and it's nice. This is common practice in some ways where documentary film is evolving and you're getting, you know, maybe some more directional moments or, you know, actor portrayal and that kind of thing. Hopefully not in a cheesy way. But you know, it's like, hey, I'm gonna have all these old videos, some abstract footage. There's gonna be multiple projectors. We're gonna be in a space, and I'm gonna be kind of directing you a little bit. You know, I want you to just do your natural thing, and react. But you know, that's a lot, and we did that multiple times. So in different spaces that were really important. You know, part of it is, you know, maybe that also helps my dad's memories come back in a way, and you know. In the process of kind of connecting all that, making sense of it, because a lot of the film is being worked on while we're shooting. So we're editing pretty much the entire 10 years. So some of it did come from the edit and, you know, wanting to go deeper because, you know, the nature of a brain injury, there's a lot of abstract elements, especially the way my dad kind of reacted. So you know, it's very meaningful to me personally because the spaces are right here. My dad's apartment, which he's been living for a good number of years. We did some projection here. And then my brother's house, which had a similar look to the house we lived in, the house we grew up in. So we did a bunch of projection outside of that house. And then the wrestling room. My older brother has a wrestling club. And so that space is very kind of intimate for me and my dad, and my brother was there. And, you know, it was really beautiful. Hopefully it worked great in the film, but, you know, that experience, you know, a lot of these Q&As, you get to dig a little deeper with, you know, the creative team. And, you know, those were really kind of special personal moments for me, being in that space, you know, just taking a minute and looking around and seeing, you know, the three projectors kind of interplay, and my dad in that space kind of affects and, you know, we're in real time sort of changing some of the images. And, you know, we with this kind of projection stuff, you bring a ton of files and you sort of react to what's happening. And then there's a lot of stuff that just kind of happens. But yeah, Dad, what was it like for you to be in those spaces and, you know, have your son kind of created art installations in some ways about you? And
Well, it was fine. And this came to my mind that I could see what was happening. And I understood that this would be a tool to help people. And I also understood that some people in my position could look out and they would have no idea what's going on. So to have my brain come back to the point that I know that this was the reason I was sent back down to earth. I had basically, I guess twice I was considered dead And on the last day, I was supposed to pull the plug. And so I woke up. And so I take that as a form of God saying to me that you need to go back and your work is not done yet. Now, I traveled a long life, and as the movie shows, you know, we all aren't good boys and girls the whole life. I mean, at least I wasn't, you know, but I seem to always come back to the middle, you know, quitting drinking and smoking 38 years ago was a big step for me. And, you know, I just look at it as a challenge. So this brain injury thing to me basically is just another challenge. You have to meet it and you have to do the best you can with it. Are you gonna hit it out of the park? Maybe not, but if you can get on base, at least you help the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that actually, what a perfect segue into the next question I was going to ask. Kind of connected still to sort of the form of the film. I feel like your different approaches to form, Tim, like the installations and then the kind of audio of space travel, and um, those sort of like moments of really connecting to this new frontier that I think is what you call it at one point actually in the film, Todd, that like you aren't attached to everything as much because it is sort of a new way of living and being for you. And so I'm really curious about like, it feels like you're, Tim, as you're trying these different ways of connecting, really trying to illustrate the process of you making the film, but also the process of for your dad. And I really love those like space moments in particular. And so I kind of wanted to hear from you about like those pieces of audio and how you felt like they would best illustrate that. Especially once like initially I was like, oh, these space moments are interesting, but then like finding out that it's something that like Todd, you got more interested in throughout your recovery, like in watching the Science Channel. I was like, oh, this makes sense, and I fully understand this now. So I love to hear you kind of talk about that as well.
Yeah, it's always kind of risky, right? To you know, play with things that aren't fully realized until later in a film, especially where you're stage setting and your first act, you're trying to get characters introduced and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, you know, I'd say just overall though, the editing process was, you know, personally something that was problematic. Dealing with my own mental health. It's, I think, very common these days to have that conversation about mental health within the documentary filmmaking community and filmmaking community, you know, in general. But especially when you're telling these really intimate, sensitive stories. And, you know, in the past 10.5 years of making my dad's film, I made all these other films, you know, some pretty traumatic things. And I think it helped me sort of solve that problem of my own, you know, because, you know, I was able to get a good counselor, therapist that literally I would show footage during therapy meetings and talk about how hard it was, you know, and that became a good space. And of course, my entire family, you know, so lucky to have that like massive support. But as the edit went on, we needed other people, you know, and so the other folks started coming into the edit. Sam Oldmeadow, who's a great editor, you know, spent the last 3 or 4 years, 3 years working on the film. John Mercer, my, you know, co-founder of Pixella and longtime collaborator, was in on the edit. My wife, Allison. There's another producer, Jeff Schmidt. So there's all these voices that really needed, because you need that support and that very personal narrative, you know. So a lot of what you're seeing reflects my dad's life and how his, you know, world is still connected in a lot of ways, but there is a lot of mystery. And so hopefully in the film, there is some abstract moments where you can insert your own story and feel that abstraction and feel those moments of uncertainty with some information, because I think that balance was important to truly represent my dad and his story and sort of the family in that way. And I'm sure, I'm sure it was scary for your dad to see a film that, wasn't typical of, most narratives, and I know there's abstract things and the space footage and projection and, even the edit, but, I don't know.
No,
Felt just like a film.
it's just fine for me.
Yeah.
I mean, we're only here for a little while. So if you can project the negatives that happen to help people learn about those before they fall into traps and accentuate the positives, a lot of things that were passed on to me from my parents, and I try to pass them on. My wife, I always say this, it was 80-20, her and 10% of mine they threw out because it was no good. So, it's just life, and what you want to do, you come back. And I just want to be able to help help your kids all the time, and keep my wife sane, because she lives with me, and it's not easy because I am not the person I was before. I have certain things that brain injury has either taught me or stays with me because of the injury that may or may not agree with her. And it's hard because I tell her I get step A, but I miss B and go right to C. And she doesn't understand me going from A to C. And I try to explain to her, in brain injury, they teach you to listen, to think, and then to react. But sometimes when you're talking to people, you haven't got that time. So it's a different experience for all of us, but I'm glad to be around, and who knows how much longer I'll be around. We don't know that, so I'll do the best I can.
Mhm. Yeah, we're glad. Well, I'm glad that you're around and able to be part of this conversation.
Well, I'm glad to be. I always look at an opportunity to help people because, it's easy to throw yourself in a position where, you don't want to talk to this one or that one, or they don't make enough, or you make more, whatever. But that's not the case in life. The case in life is everybody has the same things happen to them in life, and you have to do the best you can. And I'm always an advocate of reaching out and seeing what you can do for the other guy or gal.
Absolutely. Well, the last question that I'll ask before we kind of wrap things up, it may sound a little bit heavy as I start to say it, but something that I think that watching your film reminded me of is that film as a particular medium allows you to sort of jump through time and space in a way that we can't actually do in real life. And I think it's really interesting seeing certain sequences in the film, like times of you golfing, times of all of you all together. And I'm really curious about like thinking about that aspect of film and how that informed your edit, because you are sort of able to map these very different moments together, especially sort of the ending sequence with the Bon Iver song and everything. I'd love to sort of hear kind of how you respond to that and what you think about that, because you are kind of able to map things in a way that is really particular to film and memory. I think that's one of the most interesting things about the film and film it as a whole.
Yeah, I definitely also need to call out that, like, Bon Iver, like, they were so supportive, and like it's very rare, as a lot of filmmakers know, to get full rights in perpetuity for a song, not just the film festival thing. And they did that, like wrote a personal letter, friend of a friend of a friend got it, and then I got a call and they were just like, yeah, we own our music, so you can just use it and we'll give you paperwork and all that. So yeah, it's interesting because a lot of those scenes were cut early on,
Mm.
And so, it's a tricky balance because, in some ways there's a version of this film that could have came out like 5 years ago. And I think the difference of that version and this version is that that advice I got from the filmmaking community, which was take your time. And, it's not time with, we're talking about time within the film, but time from the creative folks. A lot happens as you have a little distance and you can look at that footage differently and you can get, different test screenings going. And so the last 5 years, was there a ton of filming done? Yes and no. There's some pretty important moments, but a lot of that footage is the first 5. And the difference of the structure and how it's set up was more within the past few years of having the ability to look at something differently. And I think the ability to once you can break that going in sequence of time, whatever film it may be, once you kind of break that open, hopefully you can make decisions that reflect the story even closer by going out of order. So, it was done at the right time, I think, because, you can't start there. It's just kind of like scaffolding process within the edit. But I don't think that was it interesting for you to see the film in a way that wasn't, because we were jumping around a
Yeah,
little bit?
it's like space. All the planets didn't come into existence at first. Everything mushroomed. And so my life with my son that took what I used to love, playing golf and trying to associate the things I used to do, were like a magnet pulling the information out of my brain. I played for 50 years and I didn't remember playing golf, and I went out to a place on the golf course and everybody said, "Why are you standing here?" And I said, "Because I can see the balls coming at me." Well, that was a vision of when I was a caddy about 50 years ago or 60 years ago. So anyway, everything that my son did, and he had to pull it out of my brain. Like I was, he was nurturing me, and it worked out. At least I feel good, and I think he feels good about the job he did. And he certainly helped a lot of people in life, and I give him credit. And I just hope that he can continue down this road. And we always want him to be successful, but I want him always to remember what he's made of.
Thanks, Dad.
Oh, yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, I think we're at the end of our time. Is there anything else that you want to make sure audiences who are watching this need to know, or anything else that you want to share?
Yeah, I want to say that no matter what happens in your life, you never quit. You always move forward. And by doing that, it's not that you're forgetting maybe some past, but you got to do the best you can for you, your family, and all concerned. And it may be through mental or physical disasters or financial or whatever, but keep moving forward, never quit.
Yeah, no, we're super, we feel lucky to be in this festival.
Yeah.
And we really appreciate the entire festival community, staff, volunteers for allowing us to share this film. And anybody that watches this film and wants to share within the brain injured community, just email us at Pixella Films. If you go to our site, you can contact us, and we'll make sure that we get you the film to share with others. But yeah, we just feel lucky, and thank you so much for hanging.
Yeah, I really feel lucky because you'll spread the word about the brain injured community and how it may look, and it's devastating injury. There's no doubt about it, but there is hope, and you will get better in time. And the caretakers just have to understand that, because when the people that have the brain injury, they don't know a way out. So they have to go through everything. But thank you so much for your time, and hopefully that everything works out well for all brain injured people.
Well, I think that's an excellent place for us to end. Thank you both
Okay.
so much. This was really wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
oh, thank you. And I hope that those watching take all of their words to heart and continue to support the film. So thank you all again so much.
Okay, enjoy your day. Bye-bye.